Welcome to My Money Mindset podcast, where we explore how a healthy mindset is the foundation for financial success. Each week, we delve into mindset hacks and practical strategies to help you enhance your income, help you make more appropriate investments for yourself, and to improve your overall financial well-being. Join us on this journey to transform your financial future by transforming your mindset. Please note that the information provided on this podcast is for general information purposes only and does not constitute as personal, financial or health advice. It has been prepared without considering your individual objectives, financial situation or life needs. Before making any financial or health decisions, you should consult with a qualified professional or financial advisor to ensure the information aligns with your specific circumstances. So let's begin and enjoy this journey as each episode teaches us on how to improve our overall mindset that it overall improves our financial success. Hey everyone. Hey, thank you for coming out today and listening to what I would like to think would be a good time in what's happening in the economy, but unfortunately we've all seen that it's been pretty difficult to see what's going on. But that being said, today, or this why I'm here was probably more about refinancing and keeping the sort of banks at a respectable interest rate on your home loan. And one of the main things that I've seen that has been going on with a lot of the banks is that we are seeing that the profits are made simply by people's complacency. Now, a lot of my clients are not as complacent as others, and they'll be regularly always updated with the interest rates and what's going on in the market and so on and so forth. But that being said, a lot of my clients tend to say, oh, look, I'll put it on the back burner for now. I've got too much going on, and so on and so forth. And my first reaction to that is to make sure, and I would say, make sure you know what your interest rate is, or more so, not just your interest rate, but your repayments. So repayments are something that we all sort of tend to just think that there's a figure in the background. What are we going to do about it? Probably nothing. I'll do it next week when I'm not as busy, and off it goes. If we're able to save even $40, $30, $20 a week, whatever it may be, and the cost of the exercise of refinancing isn't that great from bank to bank. You know, a lot of people get used to thinking that it's quite expensive. It's not. But going back to, if it's only, you could save $20 a week, 30, 40, and a lot of the time a lot more than that. It's pretty much like saying what you're doing is you're getting a $20 note or a $50 note out of your pocket and literally throwing it out on the street every Friday or whenever, and saying, well, that'll just go in the wind and here we go. And this is why profits are made in the banks today, or quite a large sum of the profits are made, is simply because of people's complacency, and also the fact that they're held in what they call mortgage prison. And mortgage prison just basically means that you got this mortgage last year or years ago. Circumstances were different. Let's say, for instance, you're just a couple that got a mortgage, and then one or two children later, the banks do the assessment with two children. Obviously, expenses are a lot higher. Interest rates may have gone up. So therefore, the servicing isn't there, and then you're locked into that one bank. And unfortunately, with a lot of the banks, when it comes to refinancing, they assess the interest rate normally can be 2% or even 3%, what they call a 3% buffer, 2% buffer, on top of the normal interest rate. So if your interest rate's around the 5.8% per annum or 5.5, they will add an additional 2% or 3%, meaning that their servicing rate is assessed at 7.5%, and they load it up, or 8.5%. And that's pretty much like a buffer for them to make sure that if your income was to drop or circumstances change whilst you are into the new loan, they're sort of made alleviance for that. Obviously, if there are increases in interest rates, that sort of stuff. So the banks are actually protecting themselves, which is a great thing. But it doesn't mean that if the banks aren't doing favors by their clients, that you guys shouldn't be considering refinancing your home loan or whatever that may be and saving on the repayments. Don't get too fixated on interest rates. Look at the repayments. And what I mean by that is simply because you get paid in dollar signs, not in percentages. So if you say, what's the percentage of my interest rate? And you say, well, it's 5.5. What are the repayments? And normally people say, well, all you got to do is times it by that and what my loan amount is, and that's the figure you get. And yes, that's right. But there are other things as far as a comparative rate and things like that that are thrown into the mix. So to assess affordability, you assess affordability in dollar signs. So what I mean by that is when you get paid in dollar signs and you take your net pay home, you're actually taking your net pay home and you make sure that your affordability, as in your living expenses, are all taken care of and the mortgage. So what happens if we have a credit card or a personal loan or a car loan that's been introduced after the mortgage or before we even get a mortgage? Things like this, affordability. What's the car loan for? Is it things for the business? Can we factor that back for tax purposes or whatever it may be? Is the credit card used for points because it helps you go on holidays every year or so on and so forth? That sort of thing. Does it help with shopping? So there's so many different perks and variables out there to sort of somewhat enable you to or encourage you to keep credit cards or car loans and make it easier that way, that we tend to forget about those repayments as well. So if you load up what they call your liabilities, and liabilities are those things as in home loans, car loans, personal loans, afterpays, all that type of stuff. Load them up and find out exactly what your repayments are. And a lot of time people go, oh, it's interest free. But there could be account holding fees. So there could be $10 a month or things like that. You've got to add all that up. Just because it says interest free for a certain period of time or on purchases or and dollar amounts, really double check that and pressure test all your repayments. So if your home loan's one of your largest loans and it's call it $300 a week as in principal and interest, and then you've got this credit card that's, oh, it's if we pay it on time, it's 0% and all that type of thing. And well, we've got a $10 monthly fee. Add all that up, and then that's your liability. So add all those expenses. Now, if in conversation with your broker or accountant, you turn up and you say, look, I really don't think we need the credit card simply because all we do it for is the points. But in actual fact, we don't use it a lot. It's probably best to get rid of it. So if there are no advantages to a credit card, my saying is always, if you don't have the money, don't use these afterpays. Believe it or not, all these, upfront payment schemes, afterpays, zip pays, all that are really placed there for people that need the money today because they don't have it today. But a lot of the time, they're marketed in a sense for people just to get them and do what they want and obviously make a cracking business for them out of it. And that's your money that they're getting the profit from, right? So that's one thing to make sure that you're aware of. Now, also, when it comes to refinancing, don't always think that you've been with a bank forever or been with them for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, whatever it might be. A lot of my clients always come back and say, I've done the right thing by them, but they haven't done the right thing by me. And when it comes to refinancing and your broker or your accountant or it comes back and gives you a better rate, and then you go back to your old bank and say, listen, guys, I'm leaving. And they turn up and say, well, no, don't leave. We're going to be able to beat the rate. That there is a bit of competition. If they're happy to do that, then God bless. But in most instances, if you are changing bank and you're changing because of a reason, it's because they haven't looked after you. It's the old-fashioned shopper going into a shop, you would never leave a particular shop if they were always serving you and making sure they're looking after you on price and stuff like that. You probably would never leave because most people love to be able to be around who they are familiar with and happy to do business if they're treated well. With this, unfortunately, it's gotten to the day and age where we all turn around and say, well, you know what? You're not looking after me. I'm leaving, type of thing. So that's why refinancing is probably one of the most popular things to do in accordance to your living expenses. So going back to that analogy of $300 a week in interest that you're paying on your home loan. If you're able to drop that down to 270, you say, well, it's $30 a week. It's pretty much like getting a $20 note and a $10 note and throwing it out into the street every time. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to repayments, because repayments in dollar signs, not interest rates. And at least then you've got a finger on the pulse as far as understanding what your repayments are over a week. Now, most people sometimes often come back to me and say, look, I work my expenses out monthly. That's fine. Whatever you can calibrate. But what I prefer weekly simply because it's even more of a micromanagement. So simply every week I know that I'm going to be doing supermarket shopping. There may be certain bills that I pay once a month that in accordance, and I add all those up. There's a expense of running a motor vehicle, and so on and so forth. That to me keeps it in check. But even fortnightly, do it fortnightly, which leads me to when should a home loan be paid? Like, is it a fortnightly regular payment? Is it monthly, weekly? Quite often, most people that want to save more, which will make their repayments as fortnightly, simply because there are more repayments, and every time that the interest or the principal is paid down every fortnight, a minute portion of your home loan drops further, and that because the interest is calculated daily is calculated on that amount. So let's say the repayment come out 2 weeks ago, then that principal that it's been reduced in will actually be the new interest is calculated on the amount that the principal was reduced. Now it's very, very, very slight amount difference, but it does tend to work out cheaper and 26 payments rather than 12, or if that's how they calculate that. So sometimes, most of the time, fortnightly is probably more beneficial if you're looking to really micromanage the savings capacity of your home loan. Consolidating debt, going back to car loans, personal loans, things like that, always encourage that by all means. It's quite often what happens, we find in the market that when people buy houses, 6 months to 12 months later, they're actually buying a new car. It's just a common thing. I don't know what it is, but most people feel as though that's what they need to do, and that's what happens. And we quite often find that when we go to refinance someone after doing a home loan health check, that the refinancing of the car loan will actually help them. So if a car loan's at $700 a month and we can reduce it, and it would make perfect sense to incorporate that within the equity of the property, then we would do that. But obviously, would have to be checking in with your accountant and making sure, working in with your accountant to make sure that everything is fine tuned for a reason. Sometimes it's not good to pay out a car debt simply because what you're actually doing is increasing your home loan debt. And if it's going to mean that you've got a 30-year home loan debt, then and you're adding additional, call it 50,000 amount to pay off the car loan, that 50,000 will have interest calculated over the next 30 years type of thing. So those numbers can be calculated quite easily anyway. So the benefits of consolidating your car loan and your personal loans or your credit cards are very, very important to do. Now they are not really. Hang on, I've just got a note here saying if okay, so the question is, what I might do the Q&As later. I'll answer this particular question. So I've just got one to say, what if I was to consolidate a car loan that I've only recently taken out and a personal loan that I've had, is it best to pay the credit card off with a personal loan, then maybe refinance with a home loan? Okay, there's a lot of shifting going, and I'll take this. I'll do the Q&A at the end, but I'll answer this particular one from Jess. So, what basically Jess wants to is thinking about doing is she wants to pay. Obviously, got a personal loan, must have money sitting there to be able to pay out a credit card, which is probably identified as a bad debt, I'm going to assume, and then refinance a home loan. Jess, I'd probably do it all in one hit as opposed to sort of getting your personal loan to pay off your credit card. Um, what I mean by doing it all in one, I'd speak to your broker, and make sure that your home loan is obviously at a good rate. So do a home loan health check. That will make sure that the rate is great. Everything's in accordance. There's no account keeping fees or extra additional fees that you don't need to be paying. Make sure the home loan's fine, because that's obviously going to be the larger of the debts. And then in accordance, if it is cost effective to pay off the personal loan with the equity in the home and the credit card, you can do that. So people aren't aware that they can actually get, when they refinance a home loan, to get the equity to pay down these debts, as in the personal loans or car loans and credit cards. You can actually get them closed at settlement. So if we're financing your home loan and consolidating debt, when it comes to the day of changing banks, the transaction day, it's called settlement day, settling from one bank to another, then they actually can do it in the background there, and they do it. You can do it all through the mortgage, all in one hit. So it saves you sort of having to do that, and a good broker or bank will actually do all this for you. So it sounds quite complicated, but it's actually quite easy. So yeah, that, I hope that answers the question, Jess. But yeah, like I said, I'll do the Q&As at the end. Now, um, where was I going with this? So basically, what I'm saying is, with home loan health checks. Now, the other thing here I haven't touched on is investment property home loan health checks. So I'm sort of focusing a little bit around owner occupied, so the house that you live in, health checks. Also with investments, a little bit of a different thing there, simply because interest is an expense on an investment property, meaning that it can be used to help reduce the amount of tax that you pay at the end of the financial year. So different again, but once again, always make sure that the interest you're paying, I find a lot of investors say, oh, it doesn't matter, it's tax deductible. Yes, that's right, but it's always better to make sure that you're paying less in anything. So what I mean by that is that, cost effective being making sure that your investment is actually working for you. So, if you then it will be tax effective, but it's also additional cost. So always make sure that your repayments are at minimal. What I mean by that, if you use the analogy of pretending that there is no interest, for instance, and you're receiving rent, that means that you're actually taking 100% of that rent and putting that into your home loan at 0% and making a lot more money. Yes, you are taxed more, but you're making a lot more in that sense. So it's all horses for courses. So I always say, make sure it's as efficient as possible with your home, with your investment property, and making sure that you're speaking with your rental, or if you do have a leasing manager, that they're managing the property for you with the rent. Make sure that they've got it at the optimum. Just don't go on a set and forget type of approach when it comes to your investment property. Investment property is certainly a great way to build capital wealth. It's a great way to actually build your property portfolio. Your rent will help pay off your investment property. It's a bonus. That just means that you're building equity, and if you're getting capital growth in your property, investment property, it just means that equity can be used to buy other properties or other things for that matter. So investment property repayments on investment property just as important as owner occupied. And the reason is because it's dollars coming out of your pocket with interest. Interest is there to make the shareholders of the bank money and the bank's money, which is fine. That's the market that we live in. But you want to make sure that you're not overspending and you're keeping everyone in check with your repayments. Very, very important, guys, and I hope that all makes sense. And the last thing that I want to make double check on was when it came to repayments was the fact that when it comes to the repayments, always make sure that you can direct debit it or rather than manually doing it, because having it on an automated system doesn't remind you every week, oh, I have to do the home loan, I have to do, because sometimes that can give you a negative connotation when it comes to making bills. You know, there's nothing worse than, oh, I've got to pay the rates today, I've got to do that. And it places you in a bit of a negative spot, maybe for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Some people it doesn't, but some quite often find that it may. And if you place that on automated system, only after you've made the assessment. So, for instance, made sure that you are on the best repayments, you have got the best, most accommodating home loan or investment loan that's helping you. It's tailor suited to you, and it suits you, and it's the most efficient and cheapest product there. Then having it on auto set as repayments ticking along in the background is very important. Offset or redraw, it's an age-old argument. Offset, a lot of the time people think, well, that's the be-all, end-all. Make sure that the offset doesn't come with most of the time offset accounts come with like a $200 to $400 account keeping fee every year. If you don't need an offset, there's no use paying an additional $300 or $400 a year for an offset that doesn't really do anything. Redraws are the old-fashioned type of offset. They literally, if you've got more money in your redraw and principal and interest is getting taken out, and you're good with your savings, nothing wrong with just having a redraw. I quite often think when it comes to investment properties that if you've got an investment property on a redraw and you don't really need an offset in it, and you've got the offset in your owner occupied, having a redraw in your investment is pretty much like a business, yeah? So the rent is going into your investment property per se. As an example, you might have it paying off your home loan, and there's so many different combinations you can do with this. But you can, what I think is probably going to help is with a redraw on an investment loan, you don't really have to pay any additional offset fees or anything like that. It's a really skimping way of having just one home loan for one property, the rent going in, paying for it, and if you have to make contributions, it's one account that you just add those contributions in. It's like a little business. It operates itself, yeah? You don't want, if you can imagine you've got one or two of these properties and one property is really not going anywhere and the other two are going really great, then that one that's a burden is going to be sucking the life out of the ones that are making profit. So it's having these combination of repayments and making sure you govern it. They're like little businesses, investment properties. They provide income as in the form of rental income. There's capital gain in there, hopefully, that they're growing up. Some will grow in different rates than others. So making sure you can really micromanage your investment properties is really important. It might become time that you may want to renovate it or use some of the funds in that investment home loan to enhance the place, paint, kitchen, whatever it is to increase your rent. That's for. So very important that you do that with the investment properties. So age-old argument, offset redraw really is up to the individual and their property portfolio. So we'll go on to Q&A now, and